Desire is loud, direction is quiet. For most of his life, desire led the way. It pulled him forward with urgency, with hunger, with restlessness. Desire said, more progress, more recognition, more proof that he was moving. But now something had changed. Desire no longer shouted, it barely whispered, and in its place, direction appeared. Direction does not excite the nervous system, it calms it. This calm confused him at first. He wondered if something was missing, if ambition had faded, if edge had dulled. But when he looked closer, he saw the truth. Nothing was missing, noise was gone. Psychologically, this is a rare transition. Most people mistake desire for purpose. They chase intensity because it feels like meaning. But desire is reactive. It responds to lack. Direction is different. Direction emerges when lack no longer controls you. He noticed how his choices were changing. Earlier, decisions were driven by attraction or avoidance. What feels good? What feels impressive? What feels urgent? Now decisions were filtered through alignment. Does this strengthen the system I'm building? Does this preserve energy or drain it? Does this move me closer to a life I can sustain? These questions were not emotional, they were structural. He was no longer designing moments, he was designing continuity. This changed how he experienced temptation. Temptation used to feel like conflict, a tug of war between impulse and discipline. Now temptation felt informational. It revealed where old wiring still existed, but it no longer commanded action. Impulse had lost authority, not through suppression, but through irrelevance. When direction is clear, distractions lose gravity. He also noticed something uncomfortable. Without desire pushing him, progress looked slower from the outside. There were fewer dramatic moves, fewer visible leaps. This would have terrified him once. Visibility used to equal validation. Now invisibility felt safe because the work had gone underground. Psychologically, this is where real construction happens. Foundations are built below surface level. They don't impress, they don't announce, but without them, nothing stands. He accepted that this phase would not be applauded. That acceptance freed him. Freedom is often misunderstood. People think freedom means unlimited options. In reality, freedom comes from limitation. Limitation reduces noise. Noise clouds judgment. He limited inputs, limited commitments, limited emotional exposure, limited access to his time. This was not withdrawal, it was consolidation. Consolidation strengthened structure. He was consolidating identity. Earlier, identity was performative. Who he was depended on what he achieved. Now identity was positional. Who he was depended on where he stood internally. That position was stable. He stood in values that no longer required defense, in boundaries that no longer required explanation, in standards that no longer needed reinforcement. This internal positioning created direction. Direction removed the need for constant evaluation. He didn't wake up asking, "What do I feel like doing today?" He woke up asking, "What supports the direction I've chosen?" Feelings were no longer in charge. They were consulted, not obeyed. This distinction changed everything. He realized how many people confuse emotional honesty with emotional authority. Honesty means acknowledging feelings. Authority means deciding despite them. He practiced both. This made him reliable. Reliable people don't rely on motivation, they rely on structure. Structure outlives mood. This understanding reshaped his relationship with time. He stopped rushing toward future milestones, stopped counting days. He focused on days that were well lived. Consistency replaced urgency. Urgency demands attention now. Consistency builds outcomes later. He chose later. Not because he was passive, but because he was patient. Patience is often misread as weakness. In reality, patience is delayed gratification reinforced by clarity. You can only wait when you know where you're going. Without direction, waiting feels like stagnation. With direction, waiting feels strategic. He trusted the process because he trusted the direction. That trust reduced anxiety. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty. Direction neutralizes it. Even when outcomes were unclear, direction remained intact. This gave him psychological endurance. Endurance is not the ability to suffer longer. It is the ability to move steadily without emotional collapse. He noticed how his inner language had softened. Less self-criticism, less internal pressure, not because standards dropped, but because standards were integrated. There was no longer a split between who he was and who he thought he should be. That split causes friction. Friction creates fatigue. Fatigue leads people back to desire, to quick hits of meaning. He didn't need those hits anymore. Meaning was embedded. Embedded meaning doesn't spike, it sustains. This act marked a shift, from wanting to become someone to choosing how to live, from chasing experiences to maintaining alignment, from desire to direction. And once direction is chosen, life doesn't need to be forced. It unfolds under guidance, quietly, steadily, inevitably. There is a phase in inner growth where reaction feels childish. Not wrong, not immoral, just inefficient. He noticed this shift not in big moments, but in small ones. A comment that once would have triggered explanation now passed without response. A delay that once would have caused irritation now felt neutral. An unexpected change that once would have sparked anxiety now invited adjustment. Nothing dramatic happened, that was the sign. Psychologically, reactivity is a survival mechanism. It exists to protect identity. When identity is fragile, everything feels personal. But when identity is grounded, events lose emotional leverage. He was no longer protecting an image, so reactions lost urgency. This didn't make him indifferent, it made him selective. Selectivity is a form of discipline. Most people think discipline is forcing action. They don't realize the deeper discipline is not reacting. Reaction wastes energy. Reaction gives power away. He began to notice how often people react just to feel involved. Silence feels like absence to them. Response feels like relevance. He didn't need relevance anymore. Relevance to self had replaced relevance to others. This changed how he handled pressure. Pressure used to compress him emotionally. It demanded immediate output. Now pressure felt informational. It showed where systems were weak, where buffers were thin, where expectations were unrealistic. Instead of reacting, he adjusted structure. Structure absorbs pressure. Emotion amplifies it. He chose structure. This is where many people fail. They build goals, not systems. Goals collapse under pressure. Systems adapt. He redesigned his days around sustainability, not productivity sprints, not heroic bursts. Rhythms. Rhythms are predictable. Predictability calms the nervous system. A calm nervous system makes better decisions. He stopped underestimating this. Most mistakes are not intellectual, they are physiological. A stressed body makes poor choices and then rationalizes them. He reduced stress at the source. Sleep was protected, stimulation was limited, commitments were filtered. This wasn't self-care as indulgence, this was self-regulation as strategy. He noticed something else. Without constant reaction, time expanded, moments felt longer, days felt fuller, not because more happened, but because less was wasted internally. Internal waste is invisible. People don't realize how much life energy is burned in resentment, overthinking, imaginary conversations, mental defense. He stopped running those loops, not by fighting them, but by refusing to engage. Attention is fuel. Whatever you give attention to grows. He redirected attention deliberately toward what he could influence, toward what mattered long-term, toward what aligned with direction. This redirection strengthened focus. Focus is not intensity, it is continuity of attention. Most people cannot hold attention because reaction keeps interrupting it. He learned to pause. Pause is powerful. Between stimulus and response exists freedom. Most people live without that pause. They call it authenticity. It's actually conditioning. He reclaimed the pause. That pause changed conversations. He listened fully without planning replies. He responded without urgency. He spoke less, but more accurately. Accuracy builds credibility. People began to notice something about him. He didn't rush to agree, didn't rush to disagree, didn't rush to fix. He allowed silence. Silence unsettles reactive people. They fill it with noise. He didn't. Silence gave him leverage, not manipulative leverage, psychological leverage. People reveal more when you don't interrupt. He learned more by reacting less. This extended to his inner world. When doubt appeared, he didn't argue with it. He observed it. Doubt often dissolves when it is not resisted. Resistance validates doubt. Observation exposes its weakness. He also noticed that not reacting didn't mean tolerating disrespect. It meant responding later, from clarity. Delayed response is often stronger than immediate reaction. Immediate reaction satisfies emotion. Delayed response shapes outcomes. He chose outcomes. This maturity came with cost. Some people mistook calm for weakness, silence for agreement, non-reaction for indifference. He let them. Correcting assumptions is exhausting. Truth doesn't need immediate defense. Consistency corrects perception over time. He trusted time. Trusting time requires patience. Patience is not passive, it is confidence in trajectory. He knew where he was going. Direction had already been chosen. Reaction no longer influenced course. This act was about restraint, not restriction. Restraint. Restraint preserves power. Power is not force. It is control over impulse. He had gained that control, and with it, a deeper kind of freedom. Freedom from emotional whiplash. Freedom from unnecessary conflict. Freedom from proving presence. He didn't disappear, he stabilized. And stabilization prepared him for something bigger ahead, because life doesn't reward reaction. Life rewards response. There is a subtle power in saying no. Most people underestimate it. They think productivity is about doing more. They think influence is about availability. They think love is about sacrifice. All partially true, all incomplete. He discovered a different truth. The strength of boundaries shapes life more than the intensity of effort. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They decide what enters your time, attention, and energy. Earlier, he let everything in: requests, expectations, noise, drama. All of it diluted focus, all of it drained momentum. Now he tested boundaries. First, small ones. Small refusals, small corrections. Then larger ones. Standards he had avoided imposing on himself. Limits he had tolerated for comfort. Obligations he had accepted for fear of conflict. Setting boundaries is never comfortable. Some people feel rejected. Some feel entitled. Some push back. This is natural. Boundaries reveal misalignment. Misalignment is not failure. It is clarity. He reinforced boundaries without apology, not aggressively, calmly, precisely, relentlessly. Psychologically, this shifted his relationships. Some connections strengthened. They respected consistency. They adapted. Others dissolved. They relied on his previous flexibility. They could not follow the new rules. Losses were minimal because friction had already cost far more. He realized boundaries protect something deeper than time. They protect identity, energy, focus. And when identity is protected, action is sharper. Presence is stronger. Decisions are cleaner. He also noticed how boundaries changed his internal world. No longer reacting to every stimulus, he had more mental bandwidth. Mental bandwidth creates clarity. Clarity generates foresight. Foresight allows anticipation. He could now detect problems before they became crises. He could act strategically, not reactively. This is the hidden advantage of restraint. Most people measure power externally. Who they influence, who notices them, who reacts. He measured power internally. Who he trusts, where he invests energy, what he preserves. Internal power compounds silently. It shows itself in calm confidence, in quiet decisiveness, in selective presence. He also observes something delicate. Setting boundaries forces self-confrontation, because you must first recognize what matters, what is expendable, what is sacred. This reflection is uncomfortable. It forces honesty. Most people avoid it. They prefer noise. They prefer approval. They prefer the illusion of progress. He chose honesty. Boundaries revealed gaps. Gaps revealed opportunities. Opportunities revealed potential. And potential demands integrity. He stopped negotiating with internal friction. He stopped negotiating with other people's expectations. He stopped negotiating with outdated habits. Negotiation is energy spent. Energy is life. This act was about reclaiming energy. Energy for work. Energy for thought. Energy for presence. Energy for self. He realized that without boundaries, no strategy lasts. Without boundaries, momentum collapses. Without boundaries, alignment decays. Boundaries were the backbone of all progress, and that realization gave him another insight. Freedom is never granted externally. It is constructed internally. Each refusal, each limit, each correction built freedom brick by brick. This freedom was subtle, invisible to the casual observer, undetectable in a crowd, but potent because invisible strength cannot be challenged. It cannot be misinterpreted. It does not invite drama. He had moved beyond seeking approval, beyond validation, beyond unnecessary reaction. He now operated from a foundation that no external condition could shake. That foundation was built on boundaries, discipline, and selective energy. And from that foundation, the next act of growth would emerge, stronger, calmer, and more inevitable than before. There is a point where effort becomes effortless. Not because life is easier, not because challenges disappear, but because internal resistance is gone. This is the subtle mastery most people never experience. He noticed it quietly in moments that seemed ordinary. A complex problem arose. He didn't panic, he didn't overthink, he didn't react. He acted with clarity, with precision, with confidence. Internal friction had ended. This is different from motivation. Motivation pushes, direction guides, alignment sustains. He had reached alignment. Alignment is not rigid, it is flexible stability. It holds under pressure, it adapts when conditions shift, it allows life to move without internal sabotage. He realized how much energy people waste resisting themselves, resisting impulses, resisting fear, resisting change, resisting truth. This resistance consumes time, focus, and attention. He had removed it, not by force, but by cultivating awareness, discipline, and trust. He observed how his relationships shifted. Some people tried to pull him back to chaos. Some were unsettled by his calm. Some adapted silently. He let each response happen naturally. Control does not require explanation. Stability does not need witnesses. He also noticed a change in ambition. Earlier, ambition demanded, it pushed, it burned, it sought external recognition. Now, ambition asked, what can I maintain at scale? Sustainability replaced intensity. Preservation replaced exertion. Ethical ambition replaced impulsive desire. He understood the difference. Intensity exhausts, control endures. Alignment creates longevity. He applied this to his time, energy, and focus. No more chasing distractions, no more responding to unnecessary urgencies, no more overextending for validation. He became selective, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Strategy preserves momentum. This alignment created mental space. Space to think, space to act, space to anticipate, space to grow. And in that space, clarity emerged. Clarity about goals, clarity about priorities, clarity about identity. Identity no longer depended on struggle, urgency, or recognition. It depended on principles, consistency, and integrity. This was liberation, not dramatic, not cinematic, but irreversible. Once internal alignment is achieved, life no longer forces you. Life moves with you. He realized that most people never reach this phase. They confuse activity with progress, noise with impact, drama with growth. He chose a different path. Impact without chaos, consistency without stress, growth without compromise. He also observed how patience matured. Earlier, patience felt like waiting. Now, patience felt like preparation. He prepared for challenges before they arrived. He maintained energy for long-term objectives. He aligned resources quietly. This preparation didn't attract attention. It didn't need validation. It simply existed, powerful in its quiet permanence. He understood a key truth. External events can never destabilize you if your internal systems are intact. Fear loses leverage. Distraction loses influence. Urgency loses control. Internal alignment is invisible authority, authority that doesn't dominate but commands naturally. He operated from this foundation, not faster, not louder, not more visibly, but steadier, calmer, inevitable. And from that calm inevitability, the next chapter began forming. No rush, no chaos, just alignment. And alignment is freedom. Freedom from distraction, freedom from internal conflict, freedom to act decisively. He had arrived at a place few ever reach: strength without struggle, clarity without urgency, presence without performance. This was the ultimate refinement, the art of living without internal friction.